In the heart of North America's dense forests, a legendary giant roams, towering over trees and myth alike. His name sparks curiosity and a sense of wonder. Paul Bunyan. What drives a figure so large to wander endlessly through a land shaped by his own hands? The content inside Paul Bunyan is a name that echoes like thunder in the forests of North America. A giant figure, taller than mountains, strong as the very ground he walked on, and accompanied by an equally colossal blue ox. The legend of Paul Bunyan was born among lumberjacks and forest workers as a way to explain what seemed unexplainable and to give a human face to the grandeur of the wilderness. It is one of those stories that grow along with those who tell them, gaining new details with each retelling. According to popular folklore, Paul Bunyan was not just a big man. He was a giant capable of dragging logs the size of buildings, clearing paths with a single swing of an axe, and crossing rivers in just a few strides. His inseparable companion was Babe, the blue ox, so large that his hooves left marks that would later become lakes and valleys. It is said that Babe's blue hue emerged after a snowstorm so intense it dyed his fur, and that, since then, the two traveled through icy lands and dense forests, shaping the landscape wherever they went. The stories about Paul Bunyan emerged in lumberjack camps at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th. On cold nights, around the fire, workers exaggerated their own difficulties and dangers of everyday life, transforming human effort into almost divine feats. Giant trees fell like matchsticks in the hands of Paul. Mountains arose where he dropped earth from his boots. Rivers were diverted by the simple act of the giant walking. Thus, the hard daily life in the forests took on an epic, almost magical tone. Over time, Paul Bunyan ceased to be just a story told among workers and became a cultural symbol. His figure began to represent the expansion westward, the spirit of conquest, and the idea that humans can dominate vast and hostile territories. At the same time, there is an ambiguous tone to this legend. The colossal strength of Paul shapes the landscape, but it also transforms it in irreversible ways. Forests disappear, rivers change course, mountains are torn apart. The legend, even without a clear intent, carries a reflection of the human impact on nature. Another interesting layer of the story is the loneliness of the giant. Despite his strength and fame, Paul Bunyan is often portrayed as someone who lives in constant motion, always working, always forging paths, but rarely putting down roots. Babe, the blue ox, is his only faithful companion. This solitary duo traversing immense landscapes creates an almost melancholic image. A giant too big to belong anywhere, doomed to wander lands that he himself helps to shape. Over the years, the legend has been adapted into children's books, cartoons, roadside statues, and even advertising campaigns. Paul Bunyan has become an almost official folkloric character, used to represent entire regions and attract tourists. Even so, the essence of the legend remains tied to the exaggerated stories told by ordinary workers, trying to lighten the weight of routine through imagination. Each exaggeration was not just a creative lie, but a way to say that the work was too hard to fit into normal words. When you hear about Paul Bunyan, you are not just hearing about a giant who felled forests. You are hearing about the human need to create myths to make sense of effort, pain, and the greatness of the challenges faced. The giant represents the strength we wish we had in the face of impossible tasks. The blue ox represents loyalty in the midst of solitude, and the landscapes shaped by the giant's steps remind us that every human action leaves deep marks on the world. That is why, even centuries later, Paul Bunyan remains alive in popular imagination, walking through forests that no longer exist, but are still alive in the memory of stories. What you saw is only part of the story. To stay up to date on upcoming facts, mysteries, and revelations, like, subscribe, and follow our channel.